They say pettiness is the greatest motivator in the world, and I agree. Some say it's bad to be petty. I disagree. I'm sure some of you who have been following the craziest lion story, aka the Lio Convoy saga, know that Mr. Enter once brought on the Fat Man to help on an investigation related to his spat against his former editor, Stargiant Productions. Like many others, I think that he should have just stopped thinking about and not worry about Stargiant. Let her be a failure on her own, and let her fade into obscurity. However, Mr. Enter took the absolute worst possible route and asked the Fat Man to help investigate. Why? Well, because potatoes, of course. But in his own words, it was because he had no choice.
I didn't expect things to change with Rebecca, but I was wrong. Things have changed with Rebecca Królewski. Things have changed for the dire, and I have no choice but to make this video.
Because we all know the evil mind control villain gave you no choice or no freedom to move on with your life and just let people forget she existed. And said evil mind control villain also made you hire the Fat Man to help you, apparently. But Carmen Ryder, he can't do all that legal mumbo-jumbo on his own. Really? Even though he was able to perfectly handle and wipe his hands clean of his stalker via threatening a lawsuit? Why not just do what you did before with Stargiant? But what does this have to do with me? Well, during this time, Enter's fanbase, including myself at the time, and many others were worried and concerned that he didn't know who he was asking for help. We assumed he didn't know about the Fat Man's misdeeds. Remember, this was after the Rosa Ray Ramsey stuff. So a lot of people knew, but wanting to be charitable, we just assumed Mr. Enter didn't know. However, later he released a follow-up saying that, predictably, the Fat Man failed him. In this scenario, he proved that he did know about the Fat Man's misdeeds, including the stuff with me.
Rosa Ray Ramsey is having a feud with the YouTuber Zaid Magenta, formerly known as Misanthropony. And by feud, I mean that she constantly harasses him and spam posts about him. She goes on Techno's livestream to try and ask to have Zaid Magenta, and full disclosure, me, be put on Techno's Internet Horrors series. One thing that you should know is that Techno was part of an internet sphere called the Senate. The Senate was a barbarian Discord server run by Lio Convoy, who has two very different realms of occupation on the internet. Talking about nerd shit, like, once again, full disclosure, rightfully calling out my terrible take on Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and also hunting predators and other degenerates. The Senate as a whole was tied to many stories, for better or worse. From Carmen Ryder to Hypnotist Sappho to, of course, Necopon.
Take note of how he's actively slamming Rosa Ray Ramsey in this clip too. I wonder who influenced that. As a result, I left a comment, where I told him the truth and he'd hear from me soon. Eventually he blocked me, and 8 months later, here I am. Now, why am I going after animated atrocities, you may ask? Because I feel like Mr. Enter has effectively ruined all media discourse online because of his antics. Not to mention, even when he reviewed a genuinely bad media, he would always have something in his reviews that just didn't sit right with me. Basically, due to my pettiness, I'm taking every animated atrocities video and telling you all the issues I have with them. Even if it's just one small thing. Each episode of this series will have one thing wrong with them, at the minimum. However, to ensure you're not here for a long time, or too short of a time, all episodes of this series will be at least 30 minutes long. Meaning some episodes might have multiple animated atrocities in them. And some might just have one. Welcome to BACKSPACE. Let's start with the first ever one, Animated Atrocities 1, with Splinter. Let's get into it.
Some viewers may find this disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
That was not a joke. If you are squeamish, have a fear of pus or blood, or just have trouble forgetting disturbing things, then you might want to scroll down and click to a new tab.
My guy, if a fucking SpongeBob episode is traumatizing you, then you've got bigger problems. And we all know that the new tab button isn't at the top of your browser. It's at the bottom of the page for this video, clearly.
Some of the imagery in this episode is unsettling. Whenever I think of a horror episode of any show, this is what immediately comes to mind. It's what lets me know that things could always get worse, and to count every single blessing we have.
I hate that you're correct in the worst way possible there. Not related to SpongeBob, just in general.
In some episodes of SpongeBob, the title card gets fitting background music, like in Spongicus, you get a Roman theme sound. I love here how it plays the same classic tune, like it's saying that it's just another typical episode.
Because it is.
As soon as the episode starts, we get our first sign that this was an incredibly terrible idea. It starts out with some incredibly mundane filler.
I mean, in a comedic episodic cartoon, I don't think visual gags count as filler.
Yeah, I wish.
Yeah, guys, I'm so edgy. I talked about how I wish the cartoon character would die.
Then SpongeBob starts trying to pull it out, and we see him cringe as he does it. We see how real the pain feels. The writers and animators are determined to make it seem as painful as possible. I don't know if this is a half-assed attempt at slapstick, or just an attempt to make the audience cringe.
Because we all know that getting a splinter is the finger equivalent of getting your dick sucked and totally isn't painful and annoying, right?
If it was the former, you've got to make the pain cartoonish and over the top, like say, have a piano fall on someone's head. That's funny because it can't really happen to us.
According to East Idaho News, in 1912, a man was in fact crushed to death by a falling piano. It crushed him so hard that he was beyond aid once the paramedics arrived. So yes, you can in fact be killed by a falling piano. In fact, the whole reason that the whole falling piano bit was ever a thing in old cartoons was because in the old times, people actually had to hoist pianos in the air via cranes and/or pulley systems in order to move them. So despite what Mr. Splinter claims, dying by a falling piano was a real possibility back then. Also, you can't exactly compare the visuals of a girl show with what most perceive as a boys show. Obviously, one is going to be more grotesque than the other. That isn't to say you can't have the other way around. All I'm saying is, read the room. Oh, and no hate to bronies either. I'm not an anti.
Most of us have had splinters, and some of us have had splinters we couldn't get out. So yeah, we can feel this pain.
It's almost as if this episode is supposed to be relatable to people who have splinters.
With the splinter getting in the way, SpongeBob ties the spatula to his nose, and that ends up annoying Squidward. Some cliches never do die.
What part about that was cliche? SpongeBob annoying Squidward is just this character.
And then Squidward sees the splinter. SpongeBob shows it to him and some of the pus drips on his face. Are you grossed out yet?
No.
Cause it gets better. Squidward tells SpongeBob that if he doesn't get the splinter out, then Mr. Krabs will be forced to send him home early. It's at this point that I began to wonder if I was overblowing this episode's vile repulsion.
You are.
And then SpongeBob called Dr. Patrick. So, enter Dr. Patrick. He starts out by chewing on SpongeBob's foot, in grotesque detail. Okay, writers, no one wants to see your sick, unfunny, and uninteresting foot fetish.
Okay, I know this is Nickelodeon, but even with the Dan Schneider stuff, the genuine foot fetish stuff was usually regulated to live action, so I doubt this particular scene is foot fetish. Gross? Sure, but fetish? No.
SpongeBob goes back inside to find Mr. Krabs and Squidward. SpongeBob is determined to hide a splinter. They're building this up quite a lot, and when it's finally revealed, a huge red abomination with pus and a pulsating red bane. That, no joke, caused me to vomit the first time I saw it.
X.
Mr. Krabs pulls it out, and surprise! Confetti! Haha! No. Pus starts spraying on Mr. Krabs. Oh, and by the way, it wouldn't be a modern SpongeBob episode without at least some Squidward torture porn.
Hey, the only Squidward torture porn to ever be real is the prank potion Phantom Arcade gave him that one time. You know, for an asexual, you sure do see sex in a lot of these non-sexual scenarios. I spent 25 minutes editing that transition, you better fucking like it. Anyways, I was debating on covering this next, as it's technically more recent and more or less the next episode, but it's listed after episode 1 on the Animated Atrocities Season 1 playlist, and I don't want to go out of my way of going release order, so yeah. The next video is 1.5 of Animated Atrocities, so yeah. The Splinter again. You know that thing that companies do where they reference some random aspect of a franchise no one actually cares about out of nostalgia baiting and nothing else? That's what this is. Let's get into it.
I said that this episode was one of the most horrendously disgusting things that I've ever seen. Since then, I've seen a 7-year-old boy try to put his moves on a grotesque 80-year-old woman.
For the record, that specific thing he's talking about is from a cartoon. Something anti-bad, something I'll get to it eventually.
I've seen a dog brutally and realistically run over.
Because Family Guy is the peak of realism, clearly.
I've seen animals constantly eviscerated.
I actually have an interesting take on Drawn Together the movie. We're not going to talk about it today, but if you're interested in that, stay tuned.
And I've seen an episode where each joke revolves around incest.
Very lily-pilled, I must say.
One of the 2 universal taboos.
I mean, I'm pretty sure there's at least 5 more. Like, come on, we live in a post-map movement world, and you're telling me that there's only 2 universal taboos? Yeah, incest is bad, but believe me, there's worse.
And that's not even getting started on things like where the dead go to die, things that are too disturbing for me to actually review.
I mean, you can review anything, really. You just gotta censor some parts of it.
Not to say that my old Splinter review is very good. I mean, when everyone starts talking about SpongeBob, and I mean everyone, they usually complain about continuity in regards to this episode or that episode in a show that, for all its purposes, doesn't give a crap about continuity.
I mean, you're not wrong, but that sort of mindset is what got us Camp Coral.
The Squidward thing doesn't work because he's hurting himself on purpose with the intent to hurt himself. That's not slapstick, that's Squidward being an idiot.
I'm pretty sure slapstick is fueled by idiocy. Like, getting hurt in a way that's weird or stupid is the definition of slapstick.
Then there's Squidward. So he's the one who jumpstarts the little bit of plot that there is. And this is one of the few episodes where he deserves to be punished for what he does. It doesn't work when they end up beating themselves up.
Okay, but he beat himself up to get workers' compensation and eventually didn't get it. He didn't injure himself because he likes it. He did that to get a result he wanted, which was to go home while still getting paid. He didn't get that result.
The workers' compensation thing comes right out of nowhere, seemingly because they forgot to tie up this loose end.
Not exactly. The workers' compensation thing was made to drive home the lesson of, if your problem is too big for you to handle, don't be afraid to ask for help. SpongeBob was afraid to bring up his Splinter because he didn't want to get sent home, only to find out that Mr. Krabs was able to just pull out the Splinter without such consequence. Could it be done better? Definitely. But that's what it's trying to convey. The next episode is about a pal for Gary. Yep, SpongeBob again. Oh, and he's joined by Thomas Memory Central, someone who unironically falls for those repost this or bad things will happen to you posts.
Repost this to 5 of your friends or you will face death. Facebook boomer chain image energy.
Yeah, remember those hacker alert chain messages you see on DeviantArt? Yeah, apparently he fell for that. Anyways, let's get into it.
So it looks like my Splinter review is a hit.
I wouldn't exactly call 200 views a hit.
So, what's first? Fuck no. I quit. I'm not doing that one alone. You guys thought that the Splinter was bad? This is what, like 10 times worse? No, I'm not joking. While the Splinter might struggle to make the top 10, a pal for Gary gets a guaranteed spot in the top 5.
Well, we'll see if that holds up in your actual top 10 when we get there.
There's no way I'm doing this.
Hi there, I'm Thomas Memory Central, and I'm here to start helping you with some of your SpongeBob episode reviews. I hear you're doing a pal for Gary.
Acting!
Okay, I don't know what that faint beep in the background of your mic is, but Audacity literally has ways to get rid of background noise. If that doesn't work, get a new mic.
Oh goody, I get to do a collaboration. I don't know whether this is a good thing since I don't have to do this alone, or a bad thing because now I have absolutely no excuse.
Remember kids, if you ever do collab with Mr. Enter, just know that he thinks you're a burden on him.
In my Splinter review, I listed a bunch of SpongeBob episodes that were worse than the Splinter. And yes, I'll get to each and every one of them. But the only one I did not elaborate on was A Pal for Gary.
I've heard that this episode from a top worst SpongeBob list was a Gary torture porn. So instead of Squidward torture porn, we have Gary torture porn.
Ah, so Gary gets the brain potion this time. I never knew that Bikini Bottom had white women.
Oh, Harry! Oh no! Gary! And I'm about to come! Oh, shit!
Yes, anytime torture porn is mentioned, I'm gonna turn it into a sex joke.
Look, I'm wasting time. We got 11 minutes to get through. Let's get this over with so I can go and get some lunch. And don't worry, there's no gross up this time, so you won't have to have a bathroom nearby. But you may want to have a wall nearby so you can repeatedly bang your head against it until blood comes dripping out of your ears and your skull begins to crack.
Do you ever just encourage your audience to self-harm?
The episode starts simply with SpongeBob feeding Gary, and then leaving. Gary seems to be asking for a walk, but SpongeBob can't. He's gotta go to work. As soon as SpongeBob leaves, Gary gathers a bunch of stuff to enjoy his time alone watching TV westerns. Throughout the day, SpongeBob keeps worrying about Gary, and it just goes on and on and on.
So Gary is having fun at home, SpongeBob is worrying about him at work, and we're supposed to be laughing?
I don't think so. Like, the jokes haven't happened yet. Or, at least the overall plot isn't the joke.
I feel like the episode is trying to hammer in the humor like a nail through a wood plank.
Care to elaborate? No? Okay.
More like a splinter through the thumb. SpongeBob comes across someone who I think is supposed to be a gypsy. She's got a bunch of things.
She's more so one of those dark magic hermit people you see in 90s or 80s movies who usually have the big magical goober to the entire plot of the film. You know the kind. Then again, I've never really seen a gypsy in real life. All I know is that Europeans are weirdly racist towards them. If you ever want to grow to hate a British person in your life, just ask them their opinion on gypsies. You will hear some of the weirdest, blatant, off-the-walls, crash-out level racism you'll ever hear. And the moment you tell them, hey, that's kinda racist, they'll tell you, excuse me, you're just a stupid American who doesn't understand something school shooting, something fat person, something stupid American. Go ahead and try it. And hey, if Fractured Light ever ends up rearing his disgusting and-hero-baiting head again, you can try it on him. And if it doesn't work, just ask whatever British person you use it on why the entire UK was complicit in Jimmy Savile. 9 out of 10 times, that'll definitely get them angry.
SpongeBob gets the bright idea to buy one of these creatures for Gary to play with. Now I know what you're thinking. This is all perfectly set up for one of the most cliched plot lines in history. The old pet, child, whatever, being jealous of the new one. I assure you, they avoid that cliche. Notice how the old lady shows how aggressive they can be, because SpongeBob does not. He just takes one, and then he leaves. And he doesn't pay her anything.
I mean, usually when said hermits hand over those magical goobers, they don't really charge anything because, you know, it has great power, something like that.
SpongeBob comes home with Puffy Fluffy, and doesn't he look like the most adorable thing ever? You know, for kids.
I don't see how those visuals aren't kid appropriate. I mean, sure, it could be scary, but scary doesn't mean inappropriate.
I've never understood why cartoon makers like abusing the character is unaware of the obvious joke.
I will agree it's done incredibly shit here, but I'm pretty sure this gag has existed for decades at this point.
Neither do I, because it was never funny, and it never will be funny.
Blanket statements. Well, the first thing I hate about this episode is that you're making me talk about Bubsy. More specifically, some failed pitch pilot for a Bubsy cartoon. Let's get into it.
What could possibly go wrong?
Oh, I don't know. How about everything? Like every single thing possible.
You're not funny.
Today I brought you a real gem of animated shit, the Bubsy cartoon pilot. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, video game mascots began to jump on the Sonic bandwagon, trying to create smart-talking protagonists.
You know, a lot of people blame Sonic for that trend, but I'm gonna be honest, while Sonic fueled a lot of it, he definitely didn't start that trend. I mean, what do you think Bugs Bunny was?
And 9 times out of 10, they were horrible.
I guess Sparkster, KO, Plock, Conquer, and Bob were bad games, huh? What, you don't remember Bob? Come on, how do you not remember Bob? You know, the bug guy for the SNES? Come on, do better.
Actually, the only success story I can think of the top of my head is Gex.
Then you are very closed-minded.
And that's because his dialogue was written and acted by an actual comedian.
Enter, we live in a post-Amy Schumer world. Do you think the word comedian means anything anymore? Fortunately, it doesn't. Normies realized fucking anyone can be a comedian just by saying my vagina for a runtime. Just like therapists, people realize that all you need to be a comedian is a sheet of paper saying that you went to college. And given the shit colleges do nowadays, that means fuck all too.
The worst of them all, though, had to be Bubsy. He had 4 video games, and one of them is often considered to be one of the worst games ever made.
Wasn't Bubsy 3D right before Mario 64 and therefore made by people who didn't know what a 3D platform was supposed to be yet?
Due to a sharp decline in sales and negative reception of the games, Accolade asked Michael Berlin to return and develop a new Bubsy game. He came back on the condition that the game would be a 3D platformer, even though no fully 3D platform games existed at that time. With no examples to follow, Accolade developers had to create the concept for Bubsy 3D from the ground up. Unbeknownst to them, Nintendo was doing the same thing with Mario in Japan. At the Consumer Electronics Show, as Accolade presented a beta version of Bubsy 3D, Nintendo showed off Super Mario 64. Michael Berlin saw Nintendo's 3D platformer and instantly knew that they were in serious trouble. Berlin wanted to start over from scratch, but the producers told him the company couldn't afford it. It was too late in the development cycle, and Accolade needed to release the game to recoup the development cost.
Like, yeah, it's a bad game, but 1, time was its biggest enemy, and 2, Assassin's Creed Shadows is out, so even if it did hold the title of worst game ever made, it doesn't have it anymore. Also, this is animated atrocities, not gaming atrocities.
But we're not here to talk about that. After all, that's what JonTron is here for. Instead, we're here to talk about the cartoon. Yes, Bubsy had a cartoon. Actually, it only had a pilot. Yes, this fascinating piece of shit was so bad that it didn't get picked up for an actual cartoon. In the early 90s, when there was no quality control of kids' cartoons.
Okay, I'm not one of those normie old people who sucks the cock of the 90s. And by that I mean I'm not Lyle Convoy. But the reason that there wasn't much quality control is because they didn't really need it. They didn't live in a woke world yet, so therefore if a show was bad, it was never that bad. The worst a kid show could be in the 90s is either boring or not funny.
Now let's talk about the running joke.
What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong?
Do you know how many times that line is spoken throughout this 22 minutes? 10 times! They say it 10 times in 22 minutes. That doesn't seem like a lot, but it gets grating very fast.
I mean, you did choose to watch a Bubsy cartoon of all things. What did you expect?
The episode begins with Bubsy waking up his pet, Arnold the Armadillo, and enter running joke number 2. This armadillo is extremely afraid of getting run over by a truck. And yes, this is played for laughs.
And last year, over 10,000 armadillos were run over by trucks in the state of Texas alone. For many of the poor little fellows, this is the last sound they will ever hear. Oh, the truck!
That's not funny, you sick fucks.
That's right, guys. If you ever laughed at a cartoon character getting run over, you're a sick fuck. If you've ever laughed at a meme about Brian getting run over, then you're clearly sick.
So, you want to know how annoying Bubsy's voice is?
You're your hero, and you're my sidekick!
John, you do know that Rob Paulson is the guy who will literally say yes to anything, right?
The plot rings the doorbell. Bubsy's niece and nephew come over to celebrate their birthday. But our lovable hero can't be bothered to deal with them, and instead wants to watch TV. Yeah, if his voice wasn't bad enough, Bubsy is both an asshole and an idiot.
Alright, look, I know Bubsy is annoying, and I hate him as much as you do. But I'd pick the fucking TV too. You have no idea how annoying small children can truly be, let alone multiple.
Sticking out your gap for the Rizzler. You're so skibbity. You're so Phantom Tax.
On the television, there's an interview with someone called Professor Virgil. He has created a helmet that turns your imagination into reality. Yes, really.
Invention, if used responsibly, could someday stop war and famine and eventually save the entire planet.
Yes, except no one would ever use that responsibly. Or at least selflessly. Admit it, if you had that helmet, you'd probably only use it on yourself.
So, we're supposed to think Bubsy is a dick for choosing the TV over the kids, but we're also supposed to find it relatable to not end world hunger?
So, Professor Virgil needs someone extremely brave, or nuts, in order to test out the helmet. And the perfect candidate just so happens to be Bubsy, and he begins to explain his heroism with stock footage. Yes, the animators were too lazy to fill up 22 minutes, so they resorted to using stock footage. That's lazier than reusing your own animation. At least that would show some attempt at quality. You guys did not care in the slightest.
Using old stock footage is a common gag in older cartoons. This isn't a Bubsy problem or a problem at all. Hell, Muppet Babies used to use stock footage for jokes.
Bubsy decides to drag his niece and nephew down to Virgil Interactive, and we see our villain. Yes, this has a villain, besides Bubsy's stupidity.
If I could get my paws on that helmet, I could finally live the lifestyle that I deserve!
Then go. He was just asking for volunteers. Just go down to the lab and offer to be one. That never occurs to her. Instead, she wants to use her 2 bumbling minions. You ever watch 101 Dalmatians? Yeah, then you know who these 2 are. But in actuality, it's probably ripping off the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog.
No, I do not need to watch 101 Dalmatians to know about the bumbling minion trope. If anything, I associate that trope with Hack and Slash from Reboot. It's either that or literally any villain from Power Rangers. Either way, this trope came from none of those shows and has been around for a while and therefore, again, isn't a Bubsy problem or a problem in general.
Even the art style seems to be ripping off the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. I shouldn't have to say this, but that's not a good show.
I mean, I'd say it is. If you want a spunky, fun, wacky comedy, I'd say it's pretty good in that regard. The only thing I hate about it is the Sonic Says segments, but that's the fault of the FCC being the FCC.
The reason Bubsy is still talked about today is due to the enormous marketing effort behind the game. There was even a pilot episode for a TV show created in partnership with Taco Bell. Michael Berlin speculated that the angled art style and southwestern setting of the cartoon were chosen because of the association with the sponsor.
Why are you ripping off a not good show?
It's almost as if the not good show is actually a not good show. Or, you know, a good show. Yeah, that's what I meant.
So the shrew is obsessed with food, and that turns out to be his weakness, and would presumably be his weakness in every episode in the alternate universe where this show got picked up. That universe is not a pleasant place. Fire rains down from the sky every Saturday, and bugs the size of potatoes infest every orifice.
I guarantee you that universe is doing a hell of a lot better than we are. A universe where Funimation didn't go woke, and a universe where people created media and not bar graphs and pie charts.
What now, Egghead?
Don't you dare remind me of a quality joke from a quality show ever again!
For fuck's sake, John, the last time I heard the term egghead used like that was in Sonic Boom, and the first time was from Full House. MLP did not come up with the term egghead to refer to nerds.
I win a pony!
Oh my god, is there going to be some semblance of quality in this piece of shit? Is there going to be something I can actually enjoy? Is there going to be something that lets their characters breathe, and understands that they can keep kids' attention without constant noise?
To anyone in the Brony fandom, I just want to let you know that Mr. Enter has done more damage to your reputation than any porn artist has. That's a fact. Imagine thinking that just putting horses in a piece of media makes it good.
The niece and nephew keep fighting over the helmet until the buzzard lands in front of them, demanding that they hand the helmet over. All of a sudden, the kids make a roller coaster appear, and after all of this, Bubsy realizes that the helmet is missing and the twins are gone. Yeah, they were presumably just standing around waiting for their cue.
I mean, that was the joke.
And then there's an earthquake. They step outside to find a huge fun fair, and they are standing on a roller coaster track. Long story short, the roller coaster runs over the armadillo and goes off, while Virgil complains that the entire world could be destroyed in the blink of an eye. Hey Professor, here's a tip. When you have an invention that could possibly destroy the world, you might want to keep a stronger eye on the thing. Just a thought.
Something Oppenheimer. I don't know what to say except for that. Zoopers.
Oppenheimer style.
Truck fell from the sky.
Get a grip, Arnie.
Oh, so they didn't forget that plot point. Question, if a truck fell from the sky and hit you square in the head, then why do you still have 2 atoms together?
The same reason why getting hit with a hammer gets you turned into a disc instead of a bloody paste. Because it's a fucking cartoon.
Oh yeah, so Bubsy can abuse the poor fellow some more. That's not funny, you sick fucks!
I'm not repeating myself.
It all ends with Bubsy getting the helmet. Unfortunately, the helmet is overloading, which means that it's going to blow up on his head. Please kill him. Please do the world a favor. Kill him. Kill him. Kill him. Please kill him. Kill him.
911, what's your emergency? Hey, my neckbeard neighbor is screaming kill him over and over again. I think he might be in one of those Cynic calls or whatever they call it. I think you should go check it out. Oh, god damn it, again? Ugh, we'll be right over. Anyways, that's all for this episode of Backspace. If you're wondering what I think of today's episodes, I don't like them either, but Enter is still wrong. Until next time, gamers, have a good night. I'm sure some of you who have been following... Wait, I don't need to do this. I'm not recording for an AI. What the fuck am I doing? I'm sure some of you who have been... Really? Even though he was able to perfectly handle and wipe his hands clean of his... My guy, if a fucking sponge... I swear to God, if that's a fucking spam caller... It fucking is, of course. SpongeBob was afraid to bring up his Splinter because he didn't want to get sent home, only to find out Mr. Krabs was able to pull out the Splinter without... Wow, I love getting text when I'm trying to read lines. That's my favorite! SpongeBob was afraid to bring up his Splinter because he didn't want to get sent home, only to find out Mr. Krabs was able to just pull out the Sprinter. Yeah, the Sprinter. He ran. He fucking ran. I hate reading. Okay, I don't know what that faint beep in the background of your mic is, but I don't... Just like therapists, people realize that all you need to be a Camino